Hello and welcome to the Writing from the Womb podcast. I'm Sama Morningstar, and I'm here with Terry Ingram, who also happens to be my mom. So thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. I feel very blessed to have a mom who would come on my podcast with me and talk about something like writing from the womb. In fact, Terry has been very enthusiastic about attending the Writing from the Womb workshops that we've been having online now for a number of weeks, and has some wonderful writings to share with us. So welcome, Terry. Welcome, Mom. And like I usually do with these podcasts, I'm going to start by reading a poem from my book, Goddesses, Lovers, and Dreams, who Terry, my mom, helped me to publish, a couple years ago now? And
Yep.
So this one will be quite familiar to you. It's called The Suckling Mind. My mind suckles up to this world as though it had milk to give, but it has run dry, giving only confusion, desolation, hold on a second. I'm going to start over. My mind suckles up to this world as though it had milk to give, but it has run dry, giving only confusion, desolation. Slowly my soul drags my screaming mind to the breast of the Great Mother, patiently coddling it quiet enough to open its eyes and see her, giant nipples gushing forth sweet nectar enough to drown in. That's what we'll start off with today. And I would love to hear anything that comes up for you around that, Terry. This one is always a refreshing one for me to read and remember to return to essence.
It's particularly poignant for me at this time in my life. It's pretty much bringing me to tears at the moment, as your grandmother and my mother is now living here with me. And the reason she's living here with me is because she has Alzheimer's and she can't take care of herself anymore. And it's so challenging. And as much as I want to be that flow of love to her, that is the biggest challenge. And I often feel dried up. So it's a constant, and I feel so grateful for the womb writing classes because it has taught me new ways, and amazing ways to return to that essence, to return to the flow that is ever present in our womb. It's been so amazing.
Does it feel like it refills your cup and your ability to flow that love to your mom, to Noni?
Absolutely. It shows me why it's blocked. It's helped me to see that it's her disease that I'm frustrated with and not her. It's helped me to, and that, I mean, I get real frustrated, and she gets frustrated too, so we're both very frustrated, but it helps me to, it takes me to that place where I'm free of the distractions of everyday life and can just allow myself to be in the moment. And that, that's such a gift.
And you had selected some excerpts from some writings that you've done in that came through for you, that flowed for you in these Writing from the Womb workshops. Would you like to read any of those excerpts now?
I would. I'm trying to find it in my thing here. 1 second. I'm almost there. I thought I knew right where it was, and I went there and it wasn't what I thought.
You know, in these workshops, we end up writing a lot more. And I've got, you know, I've been attending writing workshops too, and I've got lots of documents now working towards my biomystical womb book. And it's going to be quite a task to go back and find everything and put it all together. So I hear you. Knowing exactly where it is, not thinking you knew where it was. Like today, I couldn't find my actual physical copy of my Goddesses, Lovers, and Dreams book, which I usually read from. I instead had to read from the digital copy on my computer, hence my glitches. And that book got lost in our whole evacuation process that we just returned home from wildfire evacuation. So there's going to be a search to find that book, or just order a new copy. All right, did you find the excerpt?
Yes, I did.
All right.
I did.
Go for it.
This one, well, one thing I want to say before I start reading is that it's so amazing to me when I get into that womb space, and you know, when I meditate and sit down and meditate and allow myself to just sink into that safety spot, the wonderful things that come up that I would never expect. And that to me, and it's such a gift. It's such a wonderful gift. It's like whatever's blocking your ability to see and hear your own wisdom is gone once you settle into that space. And then, of course, the writing flows, and the writing is always amazing. Okay, so I'm going to read this part, and it's about my mother. My mother was raised by her mother alone. My grandmother had left her husband and taken her 2 granddaughters to live with her brother and sister-in-law. The women were respected and revered by the men, or there would be severe consequences. It was the beginnings of women's liberation in my ancestral family. My mother's aunt, married to my grandmother's brother, was known for her temper. She loved her husband, but did not tolerate disrespect of any kind. Her husband had grown up in a male-dominated household, as had my grandmother. Fred expected his wife to be like his mother had been, and to do as she was told. His wife, however, was not of the mind to just sit quietly by. Fred fell in love with his wife and married her because she was so wild and free-spirited. She rode on the back of his motorcycle and lived life fully. She made her feelings known. She did not change once they were married. This was a shock to Fred. I heard many stories as a child about Auntie, as my mother called her, chasing Uncle Fred out of the house with a cast iron frying pan in one hand, threatening to hit him over the head if he persisted with whatever he had done to trigger her aggression. I'll stop there.
This story is quite fascinating for me to hear. These are stories that I don't remember hearing growing up, and it's a big part of my biomystical womb book to revisit these ancestral stories and see what they mean for us today. You know, what we inherited from these ancestors and what got passed down to us, and then have more of a choice about what we're choosing to adopt from these stories, because we kind of just inherit everything, and then it's up to us as part of the ancestral healing process to sift through it and say, well, I'd like to emphasize these qualities and de-emphasize those qualities. And so I'm curious if you have any reflections on that, and what this excerpt means for you.
Well, it's sort of the introduction to the next paragraph, which is really important. So I'll read the next paragraph.
Okay.
My mother was fiery, but not quite as aggressively demonstrative. My mother, like her mother, did not want to be dominated or controlled, but had a bit less violent way of dealing with men. The hostility was there and clearly sublimated most of the time. My mother buried it deep within herself, and it came out in ways that seemed less funny and much more serious. She developed what the family came to know as her evil eye.
The
I
eye.
Yes. And when I wrote this and shared it with Sama the first time, she said she wanted to hear more about the evil eye. Well, I feel like I've been accused of having an evil eye, and I wasn't aware that I had it, and of course I was told that it was evil and I shouldn't use it. But I feel like I had this example of women who were dominant, and for me, it showed me that it's not. And then I was married to a very domineering man the first time around, and that was really ugly. But I also realized that I didn't want to be a domineering woman either. I wanted to have a partner. I didn't want to be either dominating or dominated. So it's been pretty much my life's work to find a partnership relationship, and that's what I have now. But it still takes a lot of work.
What takes the work now? I mean, you got to the point where you said, okay, did that, not want to do that again, right? The domination. And you saw examples of it being the other way, where the woman was dominating. You didn't want to do that. And
right.
Now you have a partnership. Where does the work occur continually to sustain that partnership model of relating?
Well, first of all, I think marriages always take work, but I also feel like I'm still learning all the habits that I grew up with that that I learned from my mother, and so I often have to catch myself, and I'm starting to get better at recognizing, okay, that's not the way I want to respond here. And
Can you give us an example of something?
Yes, I'm going to give you one right now. So this one happens all the time here. My husband will start to do something and he's struggling to do it, and if I'm in the room with him, I immediately feel a need to tell him how to do it, and to show him how to do it better, or whatever. And he starts to laugh and says, "You just can't resist telling me what to do." And this morning, this was happening, and my mother was there, and he turned to her and said, "Did you teach her to do this?" And my mother said, "What? To tell you what to do? Of course." So we all had a good laugh, and but those are the kinds of things that now I can laugh about, and I can see that I'm doing it, but I still have not stopped entirely doing it. I'm starting to catch myself when I'm in the middle, but it's a process, I think, to get fully past it. Recognizing that you do it is the first step, and then recognizing before you start doing it is a little bit harder.
Catching it before it's already out your mouth.
That's right. Right. Exactly.
Have you managed to do that?
A couple times. In fact, sometimes I do. But this morning I was in a hurry and trying to get a bunch of things done, and he was standing at the sink doing something, and I needed to be in the kitchen too. So it was, that prompted me to hurry him along, and instead of being patient and loving and recognizing that he would be through in a few minutes and I could then take over, I jumped in with telling him how to do it so he could hurry up and move out of my way.
That reminds me of a mantra that my husband and I have for those kinds of circumstances that really has helped us to smooth over, although not 100% of the time, but when we might be kind of pushing each other, hurrying each other to, so we could do what we're doing. We talk about, I'm not in your way, I'm in your life.
Yeah. Yes.
Right, because we all want to have someone in our life like that.
Right.
We want that partnership, And that means that they're going to be taking up space. You know, that partner that we want is going to be in spaces that we're going to be sharing space, and we're going to be bumping elbows. And there's going to be times when they're in the space that we need to be in. And if we can shift from get out of my way to I'm so glad you're in my life, that's a really wonderful
Yes.
shift. And that's part of the work right there, because the initial, when you grew up in a domination based relationship model, right, that was the way of thinking of things. You're in my way, I want to do things my way, I want to do things on my timeline, and my timeline's more important than what's going on for you, so get out of my way so I can be on my timeline. That's the domination approach to those situations. And that shift of saying, wait a second, you're not in my way, you're in my life, and I'm grateful for you being in my life. I'm very happy that you're in my life. So I'm going to take this moment to pause and celebrate that you're in my life. Then that reduces that vying for domination over the space, right? Vying for territory, which is part of the domination part. So I'm curious about the times that you were able to, when you are able to catch those words of, you know, telling what to do, or other types of dominating words, behaviors. What kind of state are you in, or what have you done to take care of yourself, to prepare yourself for your day and for your interactions that tend to be successful in helping you to feel the urge to dominate someone else and choose differently?
Well, first of all, I've taken to giving myself about an hour of personal time to meditate and reflect on life in the morning, really early in the morning, because usually my husband's asleep, and now with my mother here, this is a recent thing that my mother is here. So I'm trying to do that same thing, and if it means I have to get up a little bit earlier than normal so I can have that quiet time, it's really important for me. And then today I had this going on, plus I had some other things that I had to get done this morning, so that made it harder. But I'm retired, so usually that's enough, you know, an hour in the morning will set me in a much better place for dealing with sharing the space and being a partner rather than dominating. But at this point, I'm struggling right now to figure out how to deal with my mother and the fact that she is not the same person. She's not the mother anymore. She's really like the child, but I still see her as my mother. So that puts a stress. I'm feeling really stressed, and that makes it harder. But, you know, to stay in that space of calm, loving, abundant security where, you know, I don't feel threatened, I don't feel pressured, I feel comfortable in myself. But right now I'm going through a time of readjusting and finding new ways to find that comfort space, to stay in my womb, that flow of my womb. And it's challenging, but I'm going to get to that place even with my mother here.
I imagine it's even compounded the challenge of that, because, you know, you say that her state is like she's the child now, and you're the mother, you're caring for her, but that you probably, there's parts of you that still want to see her as the mother and wants to be cared for by the mother, by her as your mother, but she's incapable of doing that. So that's probably a cause of anxiety, because those parts of you that always relied on her to be the mother and to care for you in some way, I can imagine that could be an underlying source of anxiety every time she's incapable of doing something that she always used to do, that felt so caring and loving, and now she's not able to do it and you have to do it for her. That's a big cause of anxiety inside of you. and it seems like I can imagine, and I think you've told me stories of how there's an additional compounding difficulty in this circumstance because she still sees herself as the mother
And
the one
that's the problem.
and she sees herself as the authority, and she
Mm-hmm.
probably had a very dominating approach to mothering.
Yes.
And as you've shared already today, and so she may still be attempting to mother you in those ways, but she doesn't, her capacities are diminished, and she doesn't necessarily recognize that her capacities are diminished, and that she doesn't really understand what's going on, and that you don't, I mean, even if she still had all of her capacities, it would be difficult having her living there operating on this domination based way of relating, and having to, you know, tell her that's not how I want to relate. That would be challenging enough by itself. But then
Right.
her capacities reduced in such a way that she might not even understand or remember, or even if you did come to an agreement and had a discussion about it, she might have agreed, then tomorrow or 10 minutes later, she's going to be forgetting and going back into these habits that she's had her entire life and not really worked on changing them because they worked fine for her. So I'm curious about how, you know, what I mean, that's a whole nother layer of how your of anxiety, right? Because
Correct.
her confusion, her inability to remember what you might have discussed and agreements that you made and all of that. And so that seems like a lot, and a lot of challenge to navigate. And
Oh, it is. It's horrendous.
yeah, I mean, I just can't even imagine, you know, and so I'm curious what additional steps to care for yourself and to nurture yourself when these difficult interactions arise in the moment, or perhaps additionally to what you already described of your personal time in the morning, perhaps more is needed having your mom there.
Yes. Which is, you know, that's one of the reasons that when I saw that this was happening yesterday, when I realized this was happening today and I had forgotten about it, and this is a whole new situation for me, my first impulse was that I have to let her know I can't do it. And then I thought, no, I have to do this. This is very important time for me. And it's things that I had already planned, and I can't just stop my life, because that would just be so detrimental for me and then for her, because I would be frustrated and resenting it. And so here I am. I'm doing this. And later today, I'm going to do the writing class also. So,
well, and I imagine that took some negotiation and some preparation. Like, did you have a conversation with her? Did you set her up with something? And did you set her up with Bob, with your husband?
Yes.
What did you do?
Well, I started the dinner in the Instapot ahead of time. I made them their sandwiches for lunch. And I told them that I was going to be indisposed until 5 o'clock.
Look at you go. So not just because we're here at 12:30 to 1:30, and then the class, the writing from the womb isn't until 3. So you gave yourself the whole hour and a half or so between this podcast and the class as well. What are you going to do with that time?
I'm going to make the cornbread to go with the chili that I'm making for dinner, and I'm going to do some things that I want to do, but I told them I would not be available until after 5 o'clock.
So if you hadn't have told them that, when you were out in the kitchen making the cornbread, they may have come in and asked you to help them with this or that, or interrupted you, but you told them I'm not available. So what if they do come in when you're making in the kitchen, when you're making the cornbread, and try to ask you for something? What's your planned response? Is that when you give them the evil eye?
No, we're not doing evil eye.
Evil eye.
No, I will just lovingly tell them I'm making cornbread now for dinner, and then I have to go prepare for my writing class, and I'll be back out at 5.
Just remind them, because I mean, And I
Maybe
know,
she won't remember.
right, she won't remember that you told her already. But does Bob usually remember that sort of thing too, or does he ever?
Well, he doesn't, he generally won't ask me for anything in between meal times because unless well, this morning he's needed a lot of help with, he's trying to do something on the computer that he's having trouble with. So he may ask me to help with that, but I can just tell him I can't right now, but I'll help you later.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And he's fine with that.
Yeah, you have a partnership, so having boundaries like that is part of your relationship.
Right.
Whereas with your mom, it might be a little bit, she, first of all, she doesn't remember that you talked to her about it before. And if she's really upset or about something, or she might insist and try to override or dominate you out of having that boundary.
Yeah, but I also set her up with a puzzle to do and computer games to play. So she has things to do, and I will remind her of those things. And
Well, and I imagine that if you can remember for yourself that you're in more of a mothering role with her, even if she tries to be the authority and be the mother herself. If you remember that, even in the face of that, you have tons of skills of how to work with people having raised 4 children.
yes.
So
As a single working mother.
Right, as a single working mother. So you have tons of skills of how to make sure everybody's needs are taken care of, and well, hopefully taking care of some of your own needs. But I have
that's what I'm learning now, is how to take care of my own needs.
You might not have learned that, and I have insider information, folks. You might not have learned that then when you're raising your kids. You did learn how to manage people though, and do the best you can with that. But giving her tasks and things to do to keep her occupied, that sounds like a very motherly thing that you might have learned how to do just so that you could make dinner for everyone, right?
Yes.
But then asserting that in the space between making dinner and having your own thing that you're doing just for you, that you also get some time just for you, that's a new thing.
That's right. So I felt like I did really well.
Yeah, it sounds like you set up your day really excellent. And so wonderful. I'm so glad to hear that, and that I could be part of supporting you in those directions too. That's a big part, as listeners may recognize, of my womb-centered healing work, is helping moms unlearn the societal mandate of giving without ever receiving any nourishment or support for themselves, without giving to themselves, and switching to a more balanced, harmonious ecology of recognizing that mothers need to be supported if we're going to have a healthy society at all. That we need to give back to Mother Earth, one, and we need to make sure that all mothers are well nourished and supported, and then they're going to be able to give women, mothers can give much more to partners and other family members and children if they're well nourished than if they're completely depleted. I mean, it's just common sense. It's just basic understanding of how things work. If you've got an empty cup, you don't have anything to give.
That's right.
Your tank is empty, no one's going anywhere.
Right.
So
I drove around with an empty tank, sticking my feet through the floorboards and pushing the car around with all the kids in it for years and years. So I know what it feels like to be depleted. I'm learning what it feels like to come to a situation with an open flow of love, because I am being nourished, and staying connected to that source is becoming easier and easier, and it's just such a gift. It's a very different place of living.
Beautiful. Well, so for someone who might be fairly new at making that shift, of even just realizing that, oh my goodness, I could be living from a living and giving from a nourished place instead of from a depleted place. You know, for listeners who it might be dawning on them that maybe this is something that they need to attend to. What would you share as some first steps on that journey, as somebody becomes aware that they haven't been caring for themselves, they haven't been prioritizing their own needs and desires, they haven't been refilling their cup, and they're running on empty with their feet through the floorboards, pushing the car around and getting blisters and like that? How would you recommend starting to make a shift?
I think what hit me the hardest and helped me to really step into this place of nourishing myself was when I evaluated what I have done for my children, for my husband, for my family, for my friends, that I don't do for myself. That was the first step, to start to really look at, do I make time when I need it for me, like I make time when someone I love needs it for them? And if I'm not loving myself equally, if not more, than I'm loving other people, how do I expect to have an abundant flow of love for someone else? I've got to have that love flowing through me and to me before it can overflow to somebody else. So if I'm not giving myself an abundance of love, there's not going to be anything to flow out to someone else.
Yeah. And so when you started to evaluate that and see that this empty cup process, what were some of the clues that started to wake you up to that condition?
Feeling frustrated all the time, feeling like when I was younger and I was still a single mom with all these kids, I felt like I was just going through the motions of doing what I needed to do to take care of the kids, changing the diapers, feeding them, fixing the meals, getting through the day. I was just surviving. That was when, there was no thought of life for myself, or any kind. And then when they were younger, when they were really young, for a time, this was when you were in school and the other kids were all still not in school, and I started running in the park every morning with our neighbor, and that was my first experience of feeling good, of loving myself, of I didn't get to keep doing it forever, but I always, when I started to feel that really drained place, I always remembered how good it felt to go for a run every morning. It was something I enjoyed doing. It was good for my body. It was good for my mind. And it took me a lot of years to find something that would replace that. And so that's where I started. Once my kids were all grown and gone, and I met my current husband and we lived together, I had gained a whole bunch of weight, and I started going for a walk every day. I remembered that had always made me feel good when I went running, but by that time I was too heavy and too out of shape to start running again. But I started walking the dog and having that quiet time every morning to just have my own thoughts and to have quiet time by myself to do. It was something I did just for me. And of course, my husband was happy to have me do it, and I lost a lot of weight, and it was really good. So those were my first steps. And, it's a small thing to take an hour walk or a half an hour walk. I started out with a half hour of running, but, and then when I went walking with the dogs, I started out slower, but built up to walking an hour a day. And I didn't miss a day. I was dedicated to it. And, it was a real gift. It was wonderful. It helped me. It was a slow process. It didn't happen overnight, because this was embedded in me that mothers and women don't get to put themselves first. We're to be of service, and that was it. Even if we weren't being dominated, we were supposed to our domination was all about serving. You know?
We internalize that domination.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That other people's needs and desires were more important than our own.
Yes, exactly. So it's been a long process, but it's gone much faster. It's gone much faster since I've been doing the writing from the womb, because the meditation to get into that space and discovering that space was that was a huge step, to be able to sit in a meditation and feel my own peaceful, beautiful space without having to go for a walk, without having to go out in nature. I always have loved nature, but here I could see it and feel it within my womb space, and feel the nurture that was there available for me if I just would access it.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Well, that's why we're doing it, folks. That's why I'm loving coming together and sharing these types of meditations and finding that together, because when we do that in a group with each other and hear what others discover in that place and through the writing, I feel that nourishes everyone. Like when I have attended writing groups, at first I thought it was just about having my own connection to that place. And then I realized, wait a second, every time I listen to what someone else also is writing, and then that becomes a gift to me. So then that takes this these relational patterns to another level of healing, where I can actually receive nourishment from another person, which I think that was part of that indoctrination, that internalization of the domination model that says women are just supposed to give and they don't really get to receive anything. And that most of those domination-based relationships, the person who's being dominated isn't really receiving anything.
Yeah.
And in a partnership, there's a mutual giving and receiving. And so in these workshops, we get to practice receiving and giving and receiving and giving. And in that space of connecting with the source of our creativity, the source of our soul, where our soul comes into our body, connecting to that womb space. When we do that together, it's magnified. And then we get to receive the wisdom and the blessings and the healings that everyone else, as well as ourselves, accesses when we're in that place. And it's a co-creative way of relating that models for us how we can come into harmonious ecology with each other and harmonious relationship with each other. So I'm so glad that you enjoy these workshops so much. And listeners, if you want to join us for Writing from the Womb workshops, you can find the Womb-Centered Healing Temple on Eventbrite. So you just go to the Eventbrite website and search for the Womb-Centered Healing Temple. And you'll find Writing from the Womb and some other events that the Womb-Centered Healing Temple is putting on in Eventbrite. So I look forward to seeing you there. And thank you so much, Terry, for joining us for the podcast today. And are there any last words of wisdom that you'd like to share with us around these topics of shifting from domination to partnership, relationship, and making sure that we're caring for ourselves so that we have more to give and care for others?
I would say, remember to love yourself. Look at how you love yourself and be sure that the ways that you love yourself are at least as great as the ways that you attempt to love someone else.
Yes, indeed. We can love ourselves and care for ourselves purely for the sake of doing so, that we deserve that love and care, and we can give that to ourselves.
Yes.
All right. Well, wonderful. That's a wonderful note to end on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For now, until next time.